Well, Benjamin Okewu joins us now. He is the National President of Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Well, yes, so much as it's a sad one in the industry, well, air transport services also coming here. But let me start with this. I mean, people also talk about crash and weekends. What is it with some of these crashes and weekends? Because most of them happen at that time. Because some think that usually services are lowered, I mean, weekend, so people just relax and not as much as they do weekday. Is that the case?
No. I don't agree with that. In aviation, safety regulations is an ongoing thing, whether it is weekend or a daily business, official working hours. It's something that is ongoing. Whether we have weekends or not, the safety regulators will always do their work. Aircrafts must be checked as soon as they land. The engineers will go through their processes to ensure that the aircraft is fit to take off again. There is need for 1 or 2 corrections. Those corrections will be made. There is need for NCA to recertify the aircraft before it takes off. NCA engineers will recertify inspectors before the aircraft takes off. So it's an ongoing thing. Whether it's weekend or not, the inspectors are there 24/7.
But do you think all this went on before this plane took off?
It is too early now for us to begin to judge, to jump into conclusion. Basically, there are several intricacies. There are several processes that must be adhered to, must be completed before an aircraft takes off. And I want to believe that those processes were done before the aircraft took off. If they were not done, the investigation will of course bring out these flops. There have been several insinuations. I call them insinuations and possibilities. But that is not enough for us to begin to conclude that this is specifically what happened. It is only a thorough investigation that will bring out what actually took place, what led to the crash. My own thinking, based on interactions I had with particularly the air traffic controllers, because they are the people, that have, discussions, they have, communications with the pilot. The air traffic controller said the pilot declared Mayday, about 8 nautical miles.
11.
They said 8, actually. And the moment they declared Mayday, and he said, the pilot said 2 of their engines, went off, that they had problem with the throttle, that they were not responding, which means the 2 engines were bad. And then immediately he said that Mayday, the aircraft went down.
Mm. So, well, they have a checklist, and having done all of those routine checks, who finally goes through the checklist before takeoff?
Yeah, you see, every airline has its own
have
engineers.
an access to the checklist?
Yes. Every airline has its own aircraft engineers that are specified. That is, they are rated on those particular aircrafts. And when the aircraft lands, the engineer will go through there's what we call a routine check to make sure that the basic, equipments are functioning. If there is need for anyone to be corrected, the corrections will be made. There is need for NCA also has its inspectors on ground. They are rated on those aircrafts. If it's a repair that requires NCA certification before the aircraft takes off, NCA will have to recertify that aircraft before it takes off. But it's not in all cases that NCA has to recertify the aircraft before it takes off.
From our last guest, even though being an aviation lawyer, what we got from him was that every takeoff has to be recertified, and the regulator is the NCAA, and you say it is not in all cases that the NCAA has to do recertification.
No. For instance, an aircraft lands now. The engineer goes through the normal check, and he realizes that there's no problem with the aircraft. There's no need for recertification. If you have problem with the compass, if you have problem with the cabin, cooling system and stuff like that, those can be fixed immediately. And an NCA engineer who is on ground will look at it. If it has been done properly, the aircraft takes off. But there are major, repairs that if they are taken, NCA will have to come and recertify that aircraft before the aircraft takes off.
Like aviation fuel, which the aircrafts use,
Yes.
does anyone go through them to check that they are not adulterated fuel? Because some say some adulteration, just the way our vehicles are, could actually affect such aircrafts and make the engines not work properly.
Yes, they have inspectors who do that with how do we call them, the Jet A1 providers, the major air marketers that provide Jet A1 from time to time. For instance, in Zaria, Nigerian College of Aviation Technology Zaria, before you use the fuel, it must be tested before it's taken to the aircraft.
To your knowledge, has there been any kind of case of adulterated fuel being discovered in any of the airports?
No, we've not had any case like that. We've not had any case like that because the oil marketers ensure that what they supply to the various airlines are the correct fuel.
You're an air traffic controller, right? We believe that you work. Are you an air traffic controller?
No, I'm a planner.
Oh, you're not. Okay,
planner.
sorry. But can you give us an idea of what happens, say, in the control tower? I mean, for instance, when a plane calls for Mayday.
Yeah, when you are calling for Mayday, what it means is that it's an emergency situation. The information from the air traffic controller is that initially he had asked for permission to land at the international wing of the airport, and that permission was granted. After granting them that permission, all of a sudden again, he now asks, for another permission. And in trying to consider that, he declared Mayday.
Okay.
What that means is that Mayday is an emergency situation. Either what it means is that all the necessary emergency people should be on ground because the aircraft has lost control.
If the operation audits of airlines are not properly done, how does it affect your planning as a planner?
Well, basically, everything goes pari passu. You must make sure that the various safety operations of the airlines go pari passu with your planning. What that means is that, yes, the aircrafts must be airworthy before you can plan for them to be used for operation the next day. So they must go pari passu. And that is why there are various checks that must take place. In the aviation industry, we have A check, B check, and C checks. Those are different from the normal routine checks that the engineers do every day as the aircraft lands. They are basically checks that must take place as the aircraft attains some particular hours of operation.
The reason why I asked the initial question I asked is because, shortly after that particular crash, there were stories flying around that, it's because there was some VIP presence on the ground of the airport. That's the reason why that's why that aircraft was not allowed to land. Do you think that it is possible that for any reason, if a plane should call for Mayday, should carry the distress call, for any reason at all, do you think it could be told to hold on for a little longer?
It's not possible. Mayday is an emergency situation. The air traffic controllers are trained. They know that. Whether there is any whatever, which of course was not the case, whether there's a presidential movement or not, when there is Mayday, it's Mayday, emergency. You understand? And that should be given priority no matter who is in the air. But the air traffic controllers, like I said, we discussed with them, that was not the situation. The pilot, if he had noticed that they had snacks in the aircraft, would have landed in Ibadan, for instance.
Can you give us, there are times when customers, shortly after that too, there were also a host of stories and people would say, I narrowly escaped this. Some said, I heard the aircraft was faulty. Can you give us like an idea of how the stories, maybe you might not be privy to them, but how some of them come about? Is it possible? I know that I've heard one before where you are a passenger waiting to board a plane, maybe the flight is late, and then they tell you that the plane developed a fault. It's back in the hangar. They're bringing it back, and then all those kind of things. Are they taken into consideration when planning a flight?
Yes, basically. Okay, for instance, when you're planning a flight, you have 5 aircrafts. You plan that the aircraft will take off from Lagos to Abuja, Abuja to Port Harcourt, Port Harcourt to Abuja, or Abuja again to Yola. You do your planning.
So you are a planner for a particular company or for fan, or where exactly does that fit? Sorry.
As a person?
Yes.
I'm a planner for the aviation, Nigerian College of Aviation Technologies area.
Okay.
Yes.
So does each company have their own flight planner, or is this done centrally?
No. Each airline have.
Okay.
They have their own planners.
And they have to take into consideration the airworthiness of the aircraft.
Sure. Every day, before you put an aircraft in the plan, the aircraft must be airworthy. If the aircraft is not airworthy, there's no need putting it on the flight plan. But basically, it's one thing to put the aircraft on the plan, and it's another thing for the aircraft to develop one snag after landing. Those are the processes, and that's why the engineer is there to check that the aircraft does not have a snag. I've been in an airline before. I will not mention the airline. We had boarded, and in the process of starting the engine, the pilot discovered that the compass was not working properly. And what he needed to do, he couldn't have risked, taking off with that aircraft. He apologized to the passengers, and then he taxied back and asked everybody to disembark. The passengers were not happy, but he had to take that precautionary measures because on starting the engine, he discovered that the compass was not working properly. And then he has to go back to the hangar again for them to fix the compass. And then it was certified to be working properly. And then the aircraft came. And then it took off.
So who has the final word in terms of how an aircraft functions before, passengers finally... Is it the pilot? Is it... Who does?
Well, there are several processes. We have who we call aircraft dispatchers. They are professional licensed dispatchers. They must sign off an aircraft before it takes off. The pilot must go through the checklist. He has a checklist to make sure that all those things are functioning before he will take off also. And then the NCA has a basic role of ensuring that those aircrafts are airworthy. You give you certificates of airworthiness. You check the aircrafts from time to time to make sure that they go through their processes of check. And when they report an incident or you notice an incident, the incidences that requires NCA recertification before the aircraft takes off. And there are some that do not require their recertification before the aircraft.
What's your definition of airworthiness now? When you say an aircraft is airworthy, are there any other kind of faults that you want to call minor faults with an aircraft that still can be flown? Just the way some people would want to put their cars on the road knowing full well that it has one or two mechanical issues.
Yeah, it depends on when those faults are detected. You are in the air, for instance, and you are, say, 30, 40 nautical miles to your destination, and you discover that you have problem with your cabin pressure. It's easier for you to go to your destination than going back to where you're coming from. So in such situations, we have other measures that the pilot can use, you understand, to ensure that the people in the cabin are not suffocated before the aircraft gets to
is there any contact? Must there always be continuous contact between the pilot and the controller?
Yes. At
every point in time?
Yes, every of their conversation with the air traffic controller is recorded. It's recorded. And if you go through by the time you go through their records, you will find out that this was the time the Mayday was declared. I know that the pilot also has a life to live. So if the engines had failed, he would have requested to land in Ibadan, for instance. You understand? Perhaps these are possibilities. The pilot noticed that there were some snags, and he felt that, okay, I could manage. It was close to the airport. Let me manage it to land. And that was why I think he asked to land, because initially he was to land at a domestic wing, but he requested to land at international, which was granted. And then in approach, he now made another request. And in granting that request, before that request is granted, he declared that his throttle were no more, picking, which eventually meant that the two engines had gone bad.
All right, if an airline's aircraft makes 3 air returns in 1 month, what signal does that send?
The same aircraft or different aircrafts?
Assuming it were to be, say, different aircrafts now.
Well, basically, I think we must look at it from the perspective that even the cars we ride, you can get a supply direct from the manufacturer today, and as you are driving it home, the car develops a fault. You will not, because the car developed the fault, and then you now take it back to the manufacturer and say, okay, I don't like this car, or this car is not the appropriate car that you gave me. Basically, that fault can be checked.
That's if all the airlines, all the aircrafts in the fleet are of the same make?
Yes, like for the case of Dana, for instance, all the aircrafts are of the same make.
And an air return being a technical fault. So if there were 3 of them and 3 of them make this air return in a month, isn't that a worrying signal?
Well, it is for us in aviation industry, but it's not also enough for you to say, because there have been such air returns, for you now to say, okay, the airlines or the aircrafts are automatically grounded.
What if it's the same aircraft?
Yeah, if it is the same aircraft, the NCA has a responsibility of ensuring that they do a proper check on the aircraft to make sure that it is still airworthy. Like I was just trying to explain, that the aircraft landed with a snag does not mean that that snag cannot be fixed and the aircraft is no more airworthy.
Okay.
It is only not serviceable at the point of that snag. The moment that snag is fixed, the aircraft becomes serviceable.
You know, they say this because much as it's still in the realm of speculation and cannot be regarded as a final point or of information here, we read there was a pilot who was quoted in the papers saying that when pilots in the same airline, not this one though, some of them are told, when you experience maybe a snag or something, don't put it in your technical logbook. When you get to the office, just tell the engineers, they'll take a look at it. So if all of these stories make the rounds, and then you hear 3 air returns, and then you hear these same stories every now and then, doesn't that give some sort of suspicion saying it may actually be true that some incidents are not incidental in the technical logbook?
Well, again, as an aviator and as a union president, I'm a realist. I work with facts. I've always said that it is good for us to make insinuations, but let also not forget that the pilot is also a human being. He's in the aircraft. It is not possible that when the aircraft crash, that the pilot will survive. Just like this one, the pilot and the crew died too. So it is unprofessional. It's against the professional ethics for a pilot not to record the snag that he detects in his logbook. And because it's against the profession, I don't see any pilot landing and then having faults and not taking records of those.
Yeah, but
snags.
remember, we're all humans. What if
That's
the
exactly what
black
I'm
box?
saying. The pilot should understand first that he has to leave to fly that aircraft. And the basic thing for him to leave is to ensure that that machine is airworthy before it takes off.
You do not think that professionalism can be compromised in any way?
I am not saying that. These are all tendencies. These are all possibilities.
Yes.
But we are looking at it from a professional angle. And I am saying basically that I do not think that any pilot will, for instance, no matter what they are promising him, compromise his own life. Because first and foremost, his life is involved for any management by not recording those snags. Because there are snags. Because if the aircraft is having snags, there's no parking space in the air. I cannot park to say, okay, I'll call an engineer to come and fix it, then I'll take off again. And he knows that.
All right, talk about this before you go. I mean, why do you think that the previous accident investigation reports about some previous air crashes are not in the public domain?
Well, I don't know of Nigeria, but if I Google now, any air crash in the world.
No, I mean Nigeria, because people are saying, look, we need those two so that we can take it. Maybe it would have prevented this crash.
Well, I think basically that it depends on the way we look at it. Whether you have gone to NCA, you made requests and you did not get the report.
Are we supposed to do
Yeah,
that?
of course. We are supposed to grow above that to ensure that it's even on the internet, on NCA website, on AIB website. Like I Google now, the Alaska incident on this same MD-83 is there. And you can see the report. Because the essence of investigation, first and foremost, is not to apportion blame. It's not to punish. But it's to ensure that we take corrective measures to make sure that same incident under such same circumstances does not happen again.
What do you think about the stepping aside of the NCAA boss?
I've always said that Nigeria, we like to play to the gallery. whoever is asking for that is only being political. It's not being professional. NCA, Dr. Harold Demure, Google his name. Before he came on board to NCA, what was our airspace like? This is the man 6 months ago. Every Nigerian, even at the level of National Assembly, was praising him for the level of safety, for the level of corrections that have taken place in the Nigerian aviation industry. We have FAA Category 1. We passed 2006 International ICAO audit. We passed 2008. We passed 2010. And then because we have 2 crashes in 24 hours, yes, Nigerians have lost their life. It is pathetic. We sympathize with those who were affected, but it's not enough for us to destroy somebody like Dr. Harold Demure, who has given so much to the industry. So and I think that the politicians are just playing the politics, and I'm happy that the federal government is not playing that with them. Because what will be the essence? You have an investigative panel. You also have the AIB to conduct its statutory audit. That has not been concluded to ascertain that the fault was from NCA, and then we are already taking decisions. We will play into the gallery. It's not done all over the world. There's nowhere that has been done.